Do protests typically have fireworks and tents?
Protests?
Yeah.
No.
Or barbecues or hot tubs?
No.
Or stages and dance parties?
No.
They sound a bit more like an event. Would you agree with me, Mr. Kanellakos, those kinds of things?
No, I don't agree with you on that. In the context, it was a protest.
This lawyer seems confused while questioning this witness. I think he is in shock with how many times he didn't agree with him. Here's the clip.
Good morning, Mr. Kanellakos. My name is Paul Champ. I am the counsel for the Ottawa Coalition of Residents and Businesses, Community Associations, and BIAs from downtown.
Good afternoon.
I'll start off, Mr. Kanellakos, asking you about the information that was known by the city before the protest started. Now, you told us that the information that the city got, the hotels and so forth, you shared that with the OPS, or the Ottawa Police Service, but then the OPS provided you and the city with an assessment that they thought it was only going to be 3 days or so, correct?
That's correct.
But there was some information, even in the hands of the city, to suggest that this protest could or would go on for much longer than 3 days, correct?
There was.
And but I understand the city police did not view that. They didn't think that's what was going to happen. But did they tell the city about any contingency plans in the event the protest did go on for longer than 3 days?
I'm not aware of any.
Did you have concerns about that? Did you ask for any contingency plans?
No.
You were aware, Mr. Kanellakos, that you were saying, the numbers vary and you never quite know about who shows up. But in this particular case, you were aware that a very large number of people were coming from very far away in a large number of trucks. You were aware that those people were coming to Ottawa for several days, correct?
The number, as I said, evolved from the start of the week to the actual weekend. So the number was changing on a regular basis as more information was coming in across the country. And Ottawa Police was collating that information, sharing it with us. City of Ottawa has no intelligence capacity to gather that information.
Right. So the City of Ottawa just relied essentially completely on the Ottawa Police for their assessment of that.
We have to. We don't have the complete intelligence picture available to us from all the other agencies at the federal and provincial level that they do.
And unfortunately, we now know that confidence was misplaced, correct?
It went longer, obviously, yes.
And in terms of the response, allowing the trucks to come downtown, the trucks to park on Wellington Street, you've told us that was all based on the call of the Ottawa Police. That was their decisions and their decisions alone to make, correct?
That's correct.
So the City of Ottawa was essentially at the mercy of the Ottawa Police and their decisions on these issues, correct?
I wouldn't say we're at the mercy. It's their decision. It's our job to support that decision. And it's, quite frankly, our job to assess when they make that decision if we can fulfill the request that they make of us.
Now, in terms of protecting the people of Ottawa, that's a responsibility of the City of Ottawa as well as the Ottawa Police, correct?
When you say the word protecting, could you be more clear what that means?
Well, the safety and security of the people of Ottawa, whatever the threats or cause of those risks may be, whether it's from propane tanks or open fires or potential crime, that's protecting the safety and security of the people of Ottawa is responsibility of the Ottawa Police and the City of Ottawa, correct?
It's mostly the Ottawa Police, but the City of Ottawa obviously has a role in the health and safety of our residents, but it's a much more restricted role compared to police.
Right. Now, on the decision to allow the trucks heavy commercial trucks to come in and park, you've told us that there was a legal opinion. The Ottawa Police were telling there's a legal opinion that under the Charter of Rights and Freedoms that these commercial trucks had the right of mobility to come and park anywhere they wanted. Is that right?
No, I never referred to a legal opinion. I've never seen a legal opinion or reference to legal opinion. We were advised that Chief Slowly and others in the police made that statement publicly in terms of infringing on people's rights, preventing them from coming in.
So they couldn't prevent them from coming in because of the Charter of Rights. That's what you were hearing.
That's what we heard publicly. That's correct. And in internal meetings.
Okay. So you did hear that from the internal meetings. And did you ask your own city solicitor to provide you with an opinion on that issue?
No.
And why was that?
Well, first of all, at the time, I didn't realize they had a legal opinion. But the second part of it is that, again, police are responsible to keep public order. And as I said in my previous testimony, they're very experienced at doing it. The first weekend, we had no reason to question the intelligence and the strategy and tactics that they were employing to deal with what they believed was going to be an event similar to another event they had in the past with the farmer convoy.
Now, Mr. Kanellakos, I'm not talking about their strategy and tactics. I'm just talking about this first point about their opinion that they didn't have legal authority to stop the trucks, perhaps because of the charter. You did not instruct your City of Ottawa Council to look into that issue. Is that right?
No.
And you had occasion, we've heard evidence, to deal with federal government officials and provincial government officials, including ministers. Did any of them ever express a view about whether the Charter of Rights and Freedoms protects commercial trucks?
We didn't have meetings with them till well after the first weekend. Leading up into that weekend, I didn't have any conversations, or I don't know any of my team that had conversations on that topic with the federal government.
In your evidence, though, Mr. Kanellakos, this morning, you were telling us that even by the second weekend, when there was, you were hopeful that perhaps the police would stop more trucks from coming in the second weekend, but that, again, they told you that because of the charter, they didn't have the legal authority to stop the trucks from coming in. So by the second weekend, that was still your understanding of what the police were telling you?
Yes.
Now, I want to ask you a couple of questions about this event protest distinction. So events, those are things where there's someone's holding a celebration or marking a day or whatnot, and they want to go into a park or a parking lot or it can be a private location, it can be a public location, all of these things. So if they want to put up tents, if they want to have a large number of food served, all of those things, they need to get permits from the city, correct?
Yes.
And we've heard evidence, and we understand that, though, for protests, the city does not require do not require permits, because that's an exercise of charter rights and freedoms, correct?
Well, we tried to look at, we tried the permit. One of the benefits of the permit, or the purpose of the permit, is to understand, even if it's a protest, what the plans are of the protesters, so we can mitigate some of those effects in advance with respect to traffic, city services, etc., barricades, whatever it happens to be, garbage pickup. And so, but we can't force a protest group to buy a permit from the city, and if they don't get one, there's nothing we do about it.
Does the city have any, but if someone puts on an event and they don't get a permit, the city will shut them down quite quickly, correct?
If they're protesting,
I'm not talking about protests.
On an event, yes.
Yeah, protest versus event. But for an event, you'll shut them down quite quickly.
That's right.
On Friday, one of our clients testified, director of the Vanier BIA, that they put on events all the time, and they understand very well the types of permits they need. And they also said about the purpose of permits is often about safety. Whether you're putting up a big tent, there has to be engineering requirements and so forth. So it's all about safety, correct? The permits?
Safety is one of the key considerations, but not the only one.
Right. And so the city has in mind some difference between a protest and event.
Yes.
And now, do protests typically have fireworks and tents?
Protests?
Yeah.
No.
Or barbecues or hot tubs?
No.
Or stages and dance parties?
No.
They sound a bit more like an event. Would you agree with me, Mr. Kanellakos, those kinds of things?
No, I don't agree with you on that. In the context, it was a protest where people were doing things that were illegal. That's not an event in my mind.
Okay. I just want to ask you a couple of questions about the impacts, Mr. Kanellakos. It was your view that a lot of these different activities that were going on in downtown Ottawa were presenting a serious danger and threat to the safety and security of the people of Ottawa, correct?
Elements of it, yes.
For sure. And we also know that it's substantially interfered with a lot of the public services, garbage pickup, correct?
Yes.
The fire trucks had difficulty getting downtown.
Yes.
We heard about one incident with the Chateau Laurier that fire trucks couldn't get to them. You were aware of that event?
That's actually not true.
It wasn't true?
No.
Really?
No, one fire truck couldn't get it, but there were fire trucks that got there from other routes. We have contingencies built in for all our emergency operations, so the fire response actually did arrive. That particular truck that was witnessed couldn't get through, but we don't send fire trucks from just one location. We send it from multiple places.
Well, I'm sure the general manager of the Chateau Laurier will find your evidence interesting, Mr. Kanellakos. Now, what about the gas truck underneath the Rideau Centre? That was a serious risk and danger, correct?
I don't agree with that assessment.
It wasn't a risk or a threat to have a truck of fuel in an underground parking lot. That wasn't.
You described it as a serious threat. The truck was removed. I don't characterize it in that kind of urgency.
Well, you can review the emails yourself, sir. I believe the Rideau Centre did believe it was quite a risk and a threat.
I can't speak for the Rideau Centre.
The paramedics sometimes had difficulty getting downtown, correct?
That's correct.
What about garbage services? They were basically not happening at all in that area, correct?
Yes, in some of those areas, that's correct.
In the red zone?
That's right.
What about home care services? Home care services also stopped in the red zone, correct?
Well, could you describe what you mean by home care services? Because there were other social services that were still being provided. And there was an effort made to do that. So could you please clarify?
Yeah, people who live in their home who have mobility or other physical disability issues who require home care services. Those services were interrupted.
There were issues getting services into the neighborhoods. That's correct.
So some of our most vulnerable and disadvantaged citizens were put at risk. Is that right, Mr. Canalacos?
They were.
And snow removal was also delayed?
Yes, in some areas.
Right. And there was also all kinds of large numbers of fake 911 and 311 calls, correct?
That's correct.
That interrupted or interfered with our services in Ottawa?
That's correct.
The hospitals of Ottawa also reached out to the City of Ottawa about concerns that they were having interference with their services because of emergency calls being jammed, and also about difficulties of their workers even getting into the hospital, also patients having difficulty getting in for critical treatments and appointments.
That's true, yes.
That's true, okay. Now, just want to ask you a bit about your meetings with the organizers. Now, you said to us that you spoke with Mayor Watson to say that the PLT had reached out to you and had suggested this, and Mayor Watson did not have an opinion. Well, initially he was reluctant, but ultimately he didn't instruct you one way or the other. Is that right?
That's correct, yeah.
And then you met later that day with Mr. Marazzo, Mr. Wilson, and Ms. Chipiak, correct?
Yes.
And in that meeting, you told them that if they could do some things for you, you could arrange in a meeting with the mayor, correct?
Yes.
So it sounds there like Mayor Watson did tell you he was open to those negotiations. Is that right?
No, no. The conversation that I had with the people that were in that room was that based on an agreement, I would try to get a meeting with Mayor Watson. I couldn't commit Mayor Watson until we had an agreement.
Okay, well, I guess we'll hear from the protesters what they're understanding. But you're telling us now today is that you did not say you could get a meeting with the mayor. You said you tried to get a meeting with the mayor.
I couldn't until we worked out the final details.
Right.
At that meeting, it was way too early to be able to commit Mayor Watson to a meeting.
Right. And you referred to Mr. Marazzo as Tom. Did you know Mr. Marazzo before then?
No.
Okay.
First time I met him.
And you've had a number of interactions with him after that, is that right?
No, just one other one. The night that I was incorrect. I checked. He was at the meeting on February 13th, a Sunday night, when we were discussing the operation to move the trucks. So that's the only other time I met him.
Right. Now, you also told us that in meetings with federal government officials and also with the provincial solicitor general, there were concerns raised about the Ottawa Police operational plans, correct?
Yes.
They felt it wasn't fully fleshed out and so on and so forth?
Yes.
Now, and you shared that with Mayor Watson?
Yes.
He was in on some of the meetings, too,
yes.
I believe, yeah?
Yeah.
Did you share that information with the chair of the Ottawa Police Services Board?
I don't recall.
Why not, sir?
It's not my role to talk to the Police Services Board chair about what's happening in policing.
So if you're hearing that there's a serious concern, so just take one step back. Your understanding from those federal and provincial officials that one of the reasons why there was a delay in the deployment of the RCMP and the OPP was because there were concerns with the OPS plans, correct?
They were concerned about the readiness of the plan as the way it was characterized.
Right, and that was delaying their deployment of their
That's
resources.
What they said, yes.
And you've told us before that those additional resources were essential to bring this occupation to an end, correct?
Yes.
And so again, sir, why didn't you share that information with the Ottawa Police Services Board?
The Ottawa Police Services Board doesn't have a role in that operational aspect. So I tell you the truth, I didn't see a need to share that with Councillor Deans or Chair Deans at the time.
You didn't think it was important for the Police Services Board to be aware that other police services were telling you and the mayor that there were concerns with the operational plans of the police?
Ottawa Police was aware of that. The actual police officers were aware of that, the senior command.
Okay. With respect to Ontario, I think you suggest to us it seemed to be that there was a high level of indifference to Ottawa, the City of Ottawa's plight from provincial government officials. Is that fair?
I wouldn't say it's indifference. I think they were trying to be clear that this is a police matter. And as a Solicitor General, I think she believed it wasn't her role to go further than that.
You told us about, in the terms of the meetings with the organizers, you later had some interactions with Dean French, correct?
Yes.
And Mr. French, in your interactions with him, was it your understanding that he was aligned with the protesters, that he was representing the protesters?
Yes.
And Mr. French was the recent former Chief of Staff to Premier Ford, is that right?
I was aware of that, yes.
Right. So Mr. French was representing and was sympathetic to the protesters?
I can't judge whether he was sympathetic, but he certainly was taking a position that he was a facilitator between the protesters and us.
I think we'll hear some evidence later that he thought they were patriots. But I'm just wondering if you ever had a sense that perhaps Premier Ford had some sympathy for these protesters, and that was the reason why they weren't cooperating?
I never spoke to Premier Ford.
No, but you did give us evidence earlier, Mr. Kanellakos, that you had some sense that deputy ministers at the provincial level weren't interacting with you or providing all the assistance they perhaps could, perhaps because of direction from their political masters, correct?
Perhaps, but that's speculation.
Right. And just the last question or last narrow area, just on the injunction. So the Ottawa Police on January 30th, Chief Soley said that he would like the City of Ottawa to pursue an injunction, correct?
Yes.
And but you felt that it was your understanding the Ottawa Police was not providing sufficient information to your solicitors, is that right?
Yes, according to my solicitors.
And you gave instructions to your solicitors, though, to proceed with an injunction at some point?
To proceed discussions with Ottawa Police to seek an injunction to prepare one.
Right. And in terms of the Lee injunction, the Zexi Lee injunction, were you aware that the City of Ottawa Police, the Ottawa Police were cooperating with Ms. Lee's counsel in framing the injunction order and assisting with that process?
I was not aware of that, no. At the time, no.
So you don't know why the Ottawa Police would be cooperating with Ms. Lee, but as you say now, not providing information?
I was not aware of that information.
Okay. And were you aware that Ms. Lee was also reaching out to the City of Ottawa for assistance in their injunction? Were you aware of that?
At that time, I was not aware of that.
So during, when you say not at that time, not during the
I've been
occupation?
advised just recently this weekend in preparation for this hearing, but I was not aware of it at the time when it was happening.
So you didn't give instructions to City of Ottawa Council, Mr. White and others, not to provide information or assist Ms. Lee and her?
I wasn't aware that that advice was sought or cooperation was sought.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Kanellakos.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.